Hoping that you can hear me. I'm suddenly paranoid because of all the sound issues I have on the after party, which I'm just going back to the regular old setup for that. Although I do have a better sound card. Oh, I've just realized this isn't set right. Even though I've realized I've got a better sound card, the old one, I'm just getting too many issues with it. So I am going to do that, and I'm just going to quickly check audio coming through, everything sounding okay. Oh, this one, Bluetooth. That's right. Actually, something I've got to make sure of. So yeah, hope everybody's doing well. Great to see so many people in here. Of course, a big news week, and it just keeps on coming. From yesterday, today, everything else. New prime minister, really kind of fun. I mean, here's the thing about democracy, and it's kind of, it's a lesson for my American friends because, most of the time, even if I'm looking at BBC or Japanese news, we're overwhelmed with American news, about politics and so on, even though it's got nothing to do with, I mean, it impacts everybody. That's why we all follow it. But, what's painful is how long it takes. You can actually have an entire election campaign, of sorts, and within weeks. And in proof of that, well, not only has the Komeito party, the coalition partner with the government, um, for how many is three parties, I think. I don't think Ishin's done it, but the main opposition party, the CDP, and the LDP have all had leadership elections, all elected new leaders, which has resulted in Japan, of course, yesterday getting a new prime minister, which we're going to talk about. Everybody's already got the theme. Charlie Brown kicked the ball. That should be a whole theme on its own. But yeah, so we're going to talk about that. But also 3 minutes ago, literally 3 minutes ago, breaking news now going around on Twitter is that it's already now apparently clear that the new prime minister is going to dissolve the entire government and call a general election on Sunday, the 27th of October. So basically, exactly 4 weeks from now. So, literally, I just tweeted it out. I said, America, Japan can have multiple elections before Americans finish breakfast. And when it's compact and you don't get this fatigue of all of these weird ads and all this campaigning and all the lunatics coming out and TV needing to keep the news cycle interesting and people needing to stay relevant by being, I mean, the American president has literally been like, there have been attempted assassinations twice and people are already like bored of it. A candidate for the American presidential campaign. Um, and I don't know. It's just insane that we've got to wait till November after like all this time for the US presidential election. And it's been a genuinely fun week. So I'm going to share some of that fun as well as the result, of course, the new prime minister. But yeah, let's check out who's in here. We've got Andrea Moboya, who actually, good news, I've actually done a new thing with organizing my bookmarks this week. I actually went back, rather than trying to find the ones that I want to talk about and the ones to skip, through all of my tweets. I actually just picked out the tweets that I think are good to talk about, which is still quite a lot, frankly. But doing that in reverse order means I can actually do a chronological walk through the week, which means I have to catch up to the end of the week. Often I miss out half of the week because I'm going like from today backwards. So I'm trying to do a forward-looking timeline. So starting from September 24, and these are selected tweets, which include the story of Hakamada, who is the boxer who was wrongly convicted in 1966. And 58 years later, after being on death row for the entire time, was just released, basically finally acquitted. So I'll talk about that early on, of course, because I know it's super late for Andrea Moboya. Yeah, even later now, I guess it's past midnight there in Melbourne. So good to have you in the chat as always. But the big theme, of course, Dan H said it: dreams do come true. Charlie Brown was able to make it to the Kante, to the Prime Minister's residence in Tokyo, which was one of the places. My gym is near there. I run by it all the time. So yes, Dudu Brown indeed. He is Charlie Brown kicked the ball. That's pretty much it. Seb, great to see you as always. Great to see you, Andrew Moboya. Everybody rocking in. Lara, great to see you as always. Cobras Tenchi pointing out that even though he did get to kick the football, somehow Peppermint Patty will still make him fall on his ass. Yeah, it's Lucy who holds the ball, but that's right. Peppermint Patty is always slapping him on the back and making him fall over. I don't know really who Takaichi would be in this, but yes, interesting week indeed. So yeah, Andrea Moboy, the story about Hakamada that you wanted me to check out, it is already in the feed. So thank you for the message, though. I don't know why I didn't get a notification of that on Facebook. I really don't use Facebook that much anymore. I do log in every now and again, but thank you for pointing it out to me. Best way to get me on a DM, honestly, nowadays is Twitter. Like Facebook is just too spied on, and I don't like to use Facebook, and I log in and I don't see anything at all useful there anymore. I like Instagram and I like WhatsApp and I like other like Meta-owned services, but Facebook, yeah, I'm not as active there. So, yeah, if you point it out to me, I do definitely can receive messages there. So thank you for that. Who else we got? Sadiq, who is in Istanbul at the moment. So nice to have increasing spread around the world. Great to hear that. I just looked this up, so I don't know if Merhaba Istanbul is how you say hello Istanbul, but yeah, Merhaba Sadiq, and hope you're having a good time there. And yes, indeed, breaking news, all of that stuff. Who else we got in here? We've got he'll be here for now. Time for coffee and cookied in lack of popcorn. So there we go. Andrea, yes, hold on. Tadom, good to see you as always. Yoni, our man from Finland. Moi, good to see you. We've got Aaron, all set to go, our moderator, bringing the booms. Everybody, do remember to like the video, of course. Do that as well, especially if you're at risk of falling asleep, which I suppose everyone is most of the time. Who knows? Charlie Brown may get into a scandal before he's into office or end up like Suga. Also, there was news tonight about Suga, so I get to use all of my Suga puns and memes, which I've been enjoying doing. People affirming that the sound is okay, so that is all good. 2336. Okay. Oh, that's right. Of course. So, yeah. How's the butter? The butter is actually. I did a clean up here the other day. Ben Duncan's mum gave me a stick of butter, and I had kind of did a big tidy up, and I put it away, and I just found it the other day. I thought I'd put it behind me. It's here somewhere. Butter is good though. Butter prices relatively. I mean, Japan doesn't have rice, so you could argue from a Japanese perspective that there are bigger problems. But yeah, there is actually butter at the moment, so that part of it is good. I'm gonna adjust this angle, get it to the regular one. And peace and love from Kochi. Good to have you all in here. Let's just jump straight into it. So, of course, I'm going to go through the week in sequential, in sequence. I did just add 2 tweets after I set all of this up. The first one is just what it is. Breaking: Japan's next Prime Minister, Ishiba Shigeru, surname first. Lately, they're switching to the Korean and the Chinese, which is how you say it in Japanese. I personally still think if you're speaking in English, you should say the names according to the English convention, but that's fine. So yeah, Ishiba-san, he's going to announce tomorrow that he's going to dissolve the Diet and call a general election for October 27th. So yeah, interesting times. Interesting for reasons that I will go into today. But that is a thing that happened. Also, for all the people who thought that Charlie Brown, this is out of place. But he again, the same guy, Jeffrey J. Hall, who is a wonderful person to follow, and he's got a great YouTube channel where he does much longer deep dives into this politics stuff. So I would recommend actually looking him up and subscribing to his YouTube channel as well if you really like these sorts of topics. Showing how TV showed an animation of how apparently he proposed to his wife. His wife rejected marriage proposals from him 4 times, and he didn't give up. Yeah, his record of running for prime minister. This was his 5th run at prime minister. So basically, the old take inspiration from if you ever feel bouncing back from failure. Some people say that Ishiba could be an inspiration story from that. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But yeah, Cobra Senshi, when you come to Japan in November, should you bring rice or butter? Neither. The rice is good in Japan. I'm sure it's a little bit more expensive, but not so expensive that I would choose German rice over it. And the butter is good. So just bring yourself. Be lovely to say hello. Ida, glad that you can make it back from repairing a chainsaw. Whoa, Denmark is getting all lumberjacky. That's kind of more of a kind of Norwegian, Finland, wilds of Scandinavia image. I always thought that Denmark was a bit more urban. In which case, I'd wonder what you're doing with the chainsaw. But I hope it was fixed. When I was a kid, we used to. I lived in a town called Waihuru, which will, if anyone from New Zealand or who knows New Zealand hears the word that I used to live in Waihuru, they'll immediately wince. Um, oh yeah, we lived the mountain life. We used to chop wood, and Dad had a chainsaw. I used to do all that stuff when I was a kid. Um, but Twitter has been infiltrated by its employees as far back as 2014, 2015. All of yes, indeed. And even for that, it still is better than the alternatives. Although, there are a lot of alternatives. This is one of the problems. Honestly, even though Twitter is I mean, man, when I see the stuff that lately, Elon isn't even pretending like not to be pro apartheid to me anymore. The whistleblowing stuff, like when news of one of the Somali residents of a Wisconsin town being made a police officer, which is great if you've got a large community of, some just like they have in Seattle, and they're great, hardworking contributors to the society, and they decide that hey, they're going to have city employees who are Somali, and he's like, this is how the Democrat, and he's literally tweeting, this is how the Democrats are, going to take over the country and stuff like this. It's just like, I'm glad this isn't all that I'm seeing on my Twitter feed, but I worry deeply about someone like that. And this is the thing, I love Tesla cars, I love SpaceX, but I don't want to buy a Tesla if I know that it's this guy's company. I don't want to know what a terrible person he is. So yeah. Uh, Denmark is a huge Christmas tree exporter. I did not know that. There we go. I had an image that it was kind of, yeah, like being a peninsula and everything. It wouldn't be so forested, but there we go. Um, Team Scandinavia explaining it to me. I am now smarter for that. Let's dive into the topics. It's been a big week. Can you find black rice easily in Japan? I don't know. I've never looked for it. You can definitely get like variety. So when you say black rice as well, I'm not sure I'm thinking of the same thing. I'm thinking of things like raw rice or brown, what we might call brown rice, or sort of wild varieties. You can definitely find lots of different varieties of rice, but I think it's kind of funny. It isn't easy to find like basmati, for example, or strains that are not grown in Japan. If it's grown in Japan, and there are a wide range of rice types grown in Japan, but they're typically glutinous, short grain type rice. But you can get like brown and red, and I think I've seen black rice before. So you can probably find it online, and there are no doubt specialty shops and so on. I don't know how easy it is, as I've never tried. But yeah, interesting question, Dan A. Shubus, you made it. Glad that you made it. Good to have you in from Panama, as always, and enjoying a kampai, a coffee. I actually had I had a bulletproof coffee. I had a butter coffee this morning. It's kind of funny. I've gotten so used to that 100. How much is it now? I could be wrong about this, but I think you get a large ground bean coffee, fresh bean coffee from Family Mart that tastes delicious. You get a latte for like 140 yen. It's ridiculous. In fact, it might be 180 yen. I think it went up. But so still 480 yen for like an actual expert coffee shop place that I have to walk a little bit further away to go get, where they'll make like butter, like high intensity bulletproof coffee. I had one of those today. I'm possibly not going to sleep tonight because of it. That was 480 yen, and I'm like, okay, is this 4 times better? I mean, it is better, but you think about how much coffee costs in most places. I mean, the yen is ridiculously cheap, so that is a good thing anyway. Lysander 45, glad that you can make it. Just sat down, but was told Sunday lunch is ready, so you'll be back in a bit. Well, good to see you anyway. Glad that you can make it in here. Before you do that, Japanese rice isn't the best. It just has the best marketing. Um, yeah, I'm definitely well, and you have different rices for different purposes. Japanese rice with Chinese food is terrible. Japanese rice with fried rice, I think should be made illegal. Although in Japan, most fried rice is, of course, made with Japanese rice. You really want the longer grain, dried out. My Chinese friends who were chefs, who I lived with in New Zealand, would point out they would actually cook and then deliberately dry and then cook in oil the rice to get the really nice fried rice taste. You can't do that with Japanese rice. It's got too much water in it and stuff. So, different stuff. If you're just going to eat rice on its own, which nobody except Japan does, just eats raw rice, if you've got that as a side dish with nothing on top of it, Japanese rice holds up pretty well, but it doesn't go with everything, definitely. Extra Long DJ said, I have been today, but right up to when I started the show, DJ Sunny Side Up, I have been sorting through all the new tracks on iTunes and kind of tidying up my music library. And I've been through like 300 tracks today. And I boiled it all down to a list of select new tracks of about 49 tracks, which I will not do for the after party. It's all of your selections. Although I went through the list from last week, and I actually have put on my to buy list about 10 of the tracks that you guys all selected. So tonight, You guys choose, but I'm definitely going to do a mix this week, just of all the new tracks, because there's a lot of good music at the moment, and I really enjoyed listening to that. So yeah, we can stay up late. It is a work day tomorrow, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, I should definitely get into the topics because Andrea is sleepy, and my voice isn't going to help with that. So into the topics this week, starting on the 24th, which was, in fact, okay, yeah, I guess I didn't really tweet that much earlier on in the week. Oh, in fact, I've just realized I flipped the calendar, so I am looking at the wrong week. So yeah, starting on Tuesday, public holiday on Monday, just quiet day here, but it was still nice. The Constitutional Democratic Party, they had their leader election where they voted for Noda oh God, now I'm worried I'm going to say the name wrong. Noda, anyway, the former prime minister, the third of the three Democrat prime ministers that Japan had. In terms of what do I think about Noda, there was a progression under the Democrats from 2009 to 2012 through which the public collapsed. Nobody voted for them after the party in fact disappeared and reformed as the Constitutional Democratic Party. They went from the DPJ to the CDP, but most of the members all went to the CDP. You had the first government, which was set up by Ichiro Ozawa, who's like an old-time strategist from the LDP. He was like, let's reform government, let's do administrative reform, let's have a big, let's really take the opportunity, changing power to really make a difference to the country. And this is why I like Ozawa, because he actually has actual policy ideas and made an actual policy manifesto, which political parties don't do in Japan. They don't contest elections based on policies and what the government should do. They literally just campaign on vote for us. That's all that they sort of do. They don't talk about anything substantive. So I was kind of hopeful that with Ozawa running things in the background and getting the whole party together, and that's how they got elected. And it was going well under Hatoyama until it wasn't, until Hatoyama was like, hey, I'm going to make the Americans change all of their defense bases in Japan. So he kind of resigned, and then it turned into an internal like knife fight, which Naoto Kan won, and he was a terrible prime minister. And he said, we're canceling all of our election promises. We're going to do whatever the finance ministry tells us to do. And I'm going to be an a-hole to everybody in my own party. And then he was ousted. And then finally Noda came in and said, okay, everybody, no more fighting. Just to be clear, we are still going to do exactly what the Ministry of Finance and the bureaucrats tell us to do. We're going to try to win the trust of the Japanese bureaucracy. And we're going to stop with all of this foolish appealing to voters nonsense, which he did, which is exactly what the LDP traditionally does. So here's the thing. Abe, who came after Noda, he won the election, he beat Noda in the next election. Abe was actually more willing to fight against bureaucrats and say, I'm voted in, I'm a politician, I'm in charge, I have the policies, you do what I say. He was more willing to do that than the opposition was. He was more of a radical reformer. So Noda is literally the kind of idealist, sort of gray LD. Like, why are you even in an opposition party if your whole goal of getting in government is just to basically do whatever the bureaucrats tell you to do, which is why I didn't like him. And I'd always joked that he was actually, confused when he was running for the CDP leadership. He actually mistakenly, he thought he was applying for the LDP leadership, which is also, if you go back in time, he actually used to be in the same party as Ishiba and Takaichi. They all used to be in the same party that was run by Ozawa back in the days, back in the 1990s. So anyway, he's now he's now the leader of the main opposition party, which at least he doesn't look crazy. He's a relatively normal, if boring, and doesn't really promise. He basically promises exactly the same thing as the LDP, only being done by less stable and less experienced people, which then the question is, why would you vote for them? And the reason is that maybe you'd hope that there'll be less like corruption and scandals, which I'm not sure there's any chance of that. But anyway, one of the reasons that one of the great ideas that the CDP had when they reformed as a new party under Edeno was they said, because you have lots of political parties in Japan, including communists and, far right and conservative, and we love Osaka, and, we're totally not a religious cult. We're just normal people party and all these other sorts of parties. And they all cooperate sometimes. They'll agree that they realize that, if we put both of our candidates, in this seat, we're going to split the conservative vote or the liberal vote or whatever, and we're both going to lose. So if we agree that, in this seat, it's just going to be me and you're not going to run in here so that we don't split the vote. They coordinate between the parties. And realizing that they would split left-wing votes, the CDP went over to the communists. And they said, hey, it'd be really nice, communists, if we could coordinate on, on seats so that we don't have people like splitting CDP votes, which immediately everybody said, oh, they're strategically tag teaming with the Communist Party that wants to abolish the emperor, kick out all American US bases. I mean, the GCP are lovely people. But they're kind of, it'd be a disaster if they ever actually were in government. And when the CDP was basically like coordinating with them, that basically sort of signaled to everybody, oh, you're voting for the communists if you're voting for them. So, and this is why people wouldn't vote for the CDP, because, you sort of a vote for the CDP was helping the JCP, the Communist Party. So basically, the first thing that Noda has said is that he is going to change the strategy of coordinating with the CDP, and instead they're going to coordinate with the Ishin Party, the We Love Osaka Party, that is actually kind of, lately they've been saying things like they think that people with children should get multiple votes, and that, the voting age should be sort of lowered to 0 years. The babies should be able to vote, but their parents vote on their behalf. There've been a few sort of crazy ideas coming out of it. Also, one of their members, the governor of Kobe, or Hyogo Prefecture, where Kobe is, bullied some employees to death, and is currently in his own, is in a fight with his party that's trying to get him to resign. So the Ishin are, in generally speaking, they are more right wing than the LDP, and they're more like, hey, let's get into a war with China type of stuff. And yeah. So from that perspective, they've gone from partnering with an unhinged left wing party to an unhinged right wing party. Yeah, I don't know if that's a smart idea or not, but that's a thing that happened on Tuesday. If you've ever done the Yakatobune, if you've ever come to Tokyo, if I'm taking people from work out for dinner and stuff like that, I always definitely, if I'm taking them out to dinner, while there are great restaurants and everything, the canals in Tokyo are wonderful. In fact, I really think as a runner, they should really try to upgrade the infrastructure around them and have more, like, if most cities that have canals and waterfronts, like, that's the major like tourist attraction, right? And the rivers in Tokyo used to be so polluted that you did not want to go anywhere near them. You could probably pass out just from the air. In the 1970s, the water quality around Tokyo Bay was like a cesspit. So it was understandable that they didn't draw much attention to these canals. But lately, the water quality has improved dramatically. This has been like a 40-year effort in Tokyo to improve the water quality of all the rivers and Tokyo Bay itself. I still wouldn't swim in Tokyo Bay, honestly, but you can now swim. I mean, they even had the Olympics in it, although people did get sick. But anyway, point is, the canals are great, and you go on the Yakatabune, you get this spectacular view of Tokyo with great food going all over the place. So this is being promoted, of course, here by Unseen Japan, but it is something that is a go-to. It is a thing that I do when I'm taking people around Tokyo, and that I highly recommend to people. Shibas only eats brown rice, so there we go. I'm glad to see you're. I embrace rice of all colors. I'm colorblind when it comes to rice. Although honestly, if I'm being honest, I probably like polished rice. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So you eat, I don't know what GABA variety is. GABA is like an English school in Japan, but I assume you're not talking about Eikaiwa rice. And I'm sure, and one thing is, contrary to what you might think, because of all the subsidies and stuff, rice is not cheap in Japan. It is good, but it is not cheap. I'm sure you can get it. However expensive it is in the UK, it is more expensive here. Unpolished rice, as they like to say here. That's what they say in Japan as well. And there is a thing in Japan. I know there's a thing like some health food people say, oh, all the nutrients are in the skin. But Japan, I've seen the opposite views as well, that actually, it's literally just sort of sandpapering your insides. I mean, it is fiber, so I don't know. But it's just an excuse. I definitely eat white rice. Babies voting, yeah, literally babies voting. That's what Ishin's latest idea is, but they can't agree on anything. So thoughts on the Reiwa Party? I have a tweet on the Reiwa Party. They were reacting to Ishiba, who, in the context of the LDP leadership election, was one of the more liberal. I'll come to this a bit later on. And the Reiwa Party's comment, everyone was kind of like, well, let's wait and see, and we look forward to challenging him in the House. And everyone's comments, and the Yamamoto Taro of the Reiwa Party said, whoever the prime minister is, they're still a member of the LDP, which is a slave to corporate interests in America. So kind of putting it out there that if the Communist Party wants to get rid of the emperor and kick the Americans out, the Reiwa Party apparently wants to like declare full-on war and believes that Japan is slaves to America. So I mean, from some perspectives, so I know you could make the case. They are. I always think far left wing people are the difference between far left and far right, and there is not much of a difference. At the end of the day, they both believe in coercing everybody into agreeing with their ideas. But with the left wing, however misguided and stupid and unintentionally dictatorship, genocidal that they often are, they usually have good intentions. They usually are nice people. And the Reiwa Party, for example, had parliament modified in Japan to accommodate disabled people. With their party list, they had like I believe a quadriplegic person. So, they emphasize sort of representation of underrepresented and standing up for people who, are not typically, and sort of, fighting for rights of people whose rights are not normally stood up for. And so they believe that they're true champions of the people. But then they go into the death to America stuff. And I'm like, the good intentions. So this is exactly how the Red Army and, the pro North Korea parties in Japan all started. They're all wonderful intentions. What I respect about the right wing is that, they often argue for very similar things, but they're not under any illusion that they're actually nice people. Their campaign slogan of the far right is that we are assholes and we're going to be assholes. The campaign slogan of the far left is we are lovely people and we're going to be assholes. So, and that's definitely, and the Reiwa, they're crazy, dangerous people and they probably don't realize it. Black Rice, Yamo, there we go. Split Fries Media, good to have you in here. Morning, stayed up all night doing spreadsheets. Sorry, I actually like spreadsheets, but I'm not like not from an accounting or financial sense. I when I used to develop when I was a system engineer, we'd use Excel for everything, and as a lawyer, I've used Excel for managing lists and tracking projects and stuff. Excel is wonderful, so for everything except actual accounting. But there we go. Anyway, believe in yourself. Glad that you can make it. Good to see everybody. I'm going to speed up. We get a little. In fact, poor old Andrea Moboy, you are. If you're still conscious, I'm just going to skip straight to this guy. This guy is Iwao Hakamada, who was a boxer who worked at a small factory in 1966, 88 years old now. And when I believe it was the owner of the factory, as well as his wife and his child, triple murder, were murdered inside the factory. And the police decided this guy must have done it. He was a worker at the factory, also a boxer. People say that he was probably they were prejudiced because he was a boxer or whatever, and various other things. And so the Shizuoka police, originally they couldn't find any evidence. They just decided this was the guy. They detained him and they tried to do what they do, which is force a confession, which he didn't do. But then apparently weeks after the murder, they spontaneously found the clothes of the murderer. They found a blood-covered shirt covered in red blood. Of course, 1960s, there was no DNA. There was no way to sort of match the blood to him. But the suggestion was that, it was kind of proof that it was an employee. And this was the main evidence that he was convicted on. However, it was disposed of in a chemical big bucket or something, which basically was full of chemicals that would have, after 2 weeks, would not have left blood red. It would have changed color. And also, apparently, there's DNA. They finally, when they were able to do DNA testing on the evidence, like decades and decades later, it exonerates him. There was never, so the police never had any evidence on this, which led the lawyers who were trying to, get his. He got a death sentence for this. In Japan, you don't get the death penalty just for a single murder. You have to murder multiple people, typically 3 or more, sometimes 2, or it's really rare. It can happen in extreme circumstances, like the guy who killed Abe. It'll be interesting if that may be considered a special case that justifies one. But no matter how horrible the murder is, you have to murder multiple people to get the death penalty. This was a whole family. So the case, basically, that when they found that the evidence that was used wasn't valid, it was not only that, but the fact that this red shirt, was found weeks after, this bloodstained shirt, when it shouldn't have been like that anymore, implied that shirt, somehow a bloodstained shirt had been placed inside the factory and found as evidence 2 weeks after the case, which implies it was planted. And so part of the case to get him off was that the police must have faked the evidence. And so when he was first exonerated years ago, the police appealed because they said it's unthinkable that the police would ever fake evidence. And multiple times when he was acquitted, the police wouldn't allow him out of it. They fought to keep him still on death row and to not let him out of prison. So I believe the last time he won, he was finally let out of prison, but the police still appealed to the Japanese Supreme Court, the final court in Japan, where finally this week, from outside of prison, although basically from being on death row for 60 years, he's lost his mind. His sister is the one campaigning on his behalf. The way that death row works in Japan, it's changed over the years. It used to be that they give you 24 hours when you were going to be executed, but now they basically will only give you like 1 hour's notice. And the justice minister decides when or if or whatever that they're going to be executed. They walk you into the execution chamber apparently every day, and they don't tell you if today's going to be the day or not. So people do go crazy on death row as well. You've got no contact with the outside world. You're basically isolated. Yeah, they're kept in punishment conditions. There's no, there used to be like last meals and stuff like that. Apparently they don't do that. They don't even tell people when it's coming in Japan. The other thing about death row, which is interesting, which is relevant to another thing I'm going to bring up with the leadership election today, is that even if a court sentences someone to death, it isn't like automatic that they go and they have to be executed within a certain period, that the sentence has to be carried out. What happens is they go on to death row, and then it's at the discretion of the justice minister within the government to decide when and who gets executed. So there's a whole long list of people on death row at the moment, but the justice minister has to personally decide and sign the order to kill that guy. And because of this, effectively, it requires justice ministers in Japan. They're not passive with regards to the execution process. They actually have to literally say they have to give the order to kill a specific person. And most justice ministers in Japan, even from the right-wing parties, do not like to kill people. So a large percentage, probably the majority of justice ministers, do not sign execution orders while they're justice ministers. But then you get justice ministers who are kind of enthusiastic about catching up their homework, including the current foreign minister, who's one of the candidates for prime minister, Kamikawa, probably the most credible female candidate in the LDP leadership election in terms of being appealing to people who would like a woman prime minister, but not someone terrifying. We'll come to that later. She, when she was justice minister, had 13 people executed. Now, granted, the 13 people were mostly Aum Shinrikyo terrorists, the ones who did the sarin nerve gas attack on the Japanese subway in 1995. And indeed, most of those people have been on death row for more than 20 years, including, I think, Shoko Asahara was one of the people, the ringleader. So not sympathetic people. I mean, people on death row inherently are not. But the fact is, there are, even if there's only like 1% or 0.1% of people are like this case, who are there on death row because the police faked a piece of evidence, the fact that you've got a justice minister who decided to kill people, and she has personally now killed 13 people, even if they deserved it, I have a problem with that. I just have an ethical problem with that. I don't believe that countries and government ministers should be in the business of ordering the killings of people. I'm sure there's wars, and sure there's all sorts of situations. The only countries in the world that have the death penalty outside of America, Japan, are basically really, really bleak, like dictatorships in third world countries. Most civilized countries in the world don't do it. Japan and America are the two exceptions to this. So anyway, this guy, thank heavens, because his case was kind of had a cloud over it, is definitely why justice ministers didn't select this guy's number to be up. But there's nothing, but they have a complete discretion. The justice minister could have, she would have been an even worse person. She wouldn't have just been a killer of 13 people. She would have been, but there's a thing, anyone could have decided with a stroke of the pen to kill this person at any time in the last 66 years, and he wouldn't have known about it till 1 hour before. But fortunately, he wasn't executed, and he was exonerated multiple times. And finally, even when the Shizuoka police lost the final appeal, and they said at the end that they can't accept the result, they can't believe that a police would ever fake evidence. We're a country where police are kind of famous for getting coerced confessions and so on. So yeah, it's really rare for a country with the 99% conviction rate. By the way, the 99% conviction rate, while some people say that's clear evidence that the Japanese justice system is rigged, it's also evidence that in Japan, prosecutors do not prosecute unless they're like totally 100% sure that they've got the person. Although traditionally that was based on confessions, which police would get kind of coercively. But, you know, generally speaking, if you can hold out and the police don't have evidence, yeah, the prosecutors often will not proceed. So, you know, there is that. But a very small percentage, you know, have a country with death row and to be on death row for 60 years and to get off it is kind of a remarkable story. So definitely deservedly getting a lot of world news coverage on it. And yeah, Andrea Moboya, if you are awake, that was for you. I'm going to move on. It is 11:07. Jeez. So there we go. Continuing on, Mike Zilla M. Do I talk to Victor these days? I talk to him nearly every day. You haven't been watching as many videos as you used to. Yes, we've been doing, as Cobra Senshi says, I'm not only talking to Victor pretty much every day, but we are also doing a 2.5 Voyages. We flip the channels. Sometimes it's channel, sometimes it's channel, but we're doing 2.5 Voyages. You can see it on my channel page. We do the videos, and those continue to be fun. You know, he's got a busy life, so I use this time slot to do that when we do it. But yeah, fun as always, and you know, Victor is still Victor, so that is good. Did they find who really did it? No, they never found who did it. The police didn't even look because the police were adamant until this week, and even this week they're still adamant that Hakamada was the guilty guy, and they don't have to look for anyone else. So no one looked for anyone else. And if it was, even if it was, it's beyond the statute of limitations, right? I mean, this happens sometimes. Sometimes literally the 20-year statute of limitations happens. And on the day after that, someone says, yeah, that was me. But no, I don't think anyone's actually, obviously, if someone did that, then you would get the person on death row off of it as well. So no, there's been no confession. And even if someone did confess at this point, I think they would be, I mean, the Japanese police would probably arrest him for, you know, holding too many paper clips or something like that. They always find some secondary charge, but yeah, they don't have that. So yeah, Jeremy Irons was involved in trying to stop his execution in the 2010s. Well, Jeremy Irons, good job, it would seem. So yes, indeed, whack job or a quack. I mean, yeah, this is actually a mental health term. When you become a whack job, that's like after about 20 years of being insane, and then after the next phase is where you actually do become a complete quack job. So that's actually scientifically accurate and appropriate. Duck objection. Okay, now the chat is just getting silly there. But anyway, Japan has a statute of limitations for murder. I think it did have a statute of limitations. There was a case in the early 2000s, I remember, where this happened, where someone confessed after they were safe. Most countries do, even for murder, actually. But yeah. I mean, Natalie, the Japan death row system seems even more cruel than the US one. Yeah, you know, it is, and it's kind of by intention. I mean, death sentences are inherently kind of mean, but yeah, they do add to it. So you've got all of that. Anyway, in Denmark, there's no statute of limitations for murder. I think some countries, and lately there's been changes and rethinking on that, but I think Japan still has it. Anyway, maybe someone can Google it. Continuing on, because I've only done like one story and we're 40 minutes into the show. Dang, what are we going to do? Oh yeah, so I got the AirPods 4 with noise cancelling, and I love them. The AirPods are good for my ears, but with the noise cancelling, the sound is so much better. And going out running and being on a train and always having to play full volume because the surrounding noise, it just sort of interferes, which means I've always got the headphones on full volume. That's not good. So now I can have like half volume and hear perfectly well, and the sound is better when I'm out running. And I never run with both ears. I want to be able to hear if there's a bus about to run me over. So I only use one ear, but I can hear perfectly well in that ear. It's really great. So yeah, the AirPods. So if you use AirPods, if you have an iPhone and you have an AirPods 3, I would say that was a meaningful upgrade, and it was worth it. So I'm loving the new AirPods. Also, I did watch Shogun, and it was really good. I think I mentioned that I was enjoying it last week. I finished it. It was well done. It's going to be a new season, obviously. But yeah, well done. They deserved all those Emmys. So good stuff there. I think I mentioned before why I'm a fan of Ichiro Ozawa. A lot of people don't like Ichiro Ozawa because he's a bit like, he's one of these godfathers of Japanese politics who doesn't himself. He has been party leader of different parties and so on, and he has been the front. He has been, or he might be the next prime minister. But generally, rather than being the guy actually in charge, he likes to be the shadow shogun. He likes to be the guy in the background. The Taro Aso, or the Mori, or the sort of the elder statesman who actually, without ever putting his neck out and actually being the one to catch it, he offers other people the chance to become prime minister, and he moves everything around in the background to make it happen. He originally started out in the LDP, and when the LDP got kicked out in 1995, and the Socialists won, first time ever that the LDP had lost power, and the bubble was bursting and everything. A bunch of people from the LDP and some other parties went to go and set up a new party that Ozawa set up. And Ozawa was basically, he was quite young, but he wanted to be running. He wanted to be one of the people who sort of like decides what the LDP does. And because, all the old guys were sort of not letting him come up and try out his ideas for reforming the Japanese government to get out of the bubble collapse. He didn't want to wait his turn. So he went and set up a new political party, and he got a bunch of young politicians to come and join him. Many of them left the LDP to come and join him in this new party, which they thought could beat the socialists and actually even outcompete the LDP and be the sort of the new face of government. And that party included such people as Noda, the new opposition leader, Shigeru Ishiba, the current prime minister, Sanai Takaichi, who was the main, who made the final round vote against Ishiba, as well as Yuriko Koike, the Tokyo governor. So now all the most powerful people in Japan were basically in the team that was set up by Ichiro Ozawa to take over government. They've all gone on to be very successful. And Ichiro Ozawa right now is in the CDP. And basically, again, rather than put himself out the front, he threw his support behind Noda, which is probably how he got elected. He got everybody else to vote for him. And while I'm not a big fan of Noda, knowing that Ozawa is behind him means, he might not just surrender over to the bureaucrats. He might actually have meaningful ideas. I like Ozawa because he actually has policies, and he is actually pro-reform of the Japanese government, and he has some really, I think, good ideas for how to do that. But most people hate him because he's one of these sort of, shadowy, dodgy sort of, people who run things in the background. But it means that the upcoming election will be between two people that used to basically work for Ichiro Ozawa in the party that he led in the 1990s. So interesting dynamic there. How much were the AirPods? And American dollars, I think they're 170. It's like 120 for the ones without noise cancelling, but it's basically the same thing. It's just like a firmware update. So not cheap, and again, only if you've got an iPhone. But I would say my best, I wouldn't even consider getting the new iPhone right now, but the AirPods were a really good buy. You can look them up anyway. Void Theft, glad that you can make it. Void Theft did a video this week talking about JVloggers. Nice to see you posting there, so go check out Void Theft's channel. What else have we got in here? We've got Cold Fusion is a great channel. In fact, maybe Dan H recommended it. I think someone watching this recommended the channel to me, Australian guy. And he was talking about privacy issues with cars nowadays, with connected cars. Most cars nowadays are connected to the internet, and they share all, and they sort of, when you buy the car, they say, hey, can you give permission to share car-related data back to the manufacturer for, helps for improving services and so on. And you click through and say, yeah, whatever, give me my Toyota. And it turns out most of them, including Toyotas, but not just Toyotas, GMs, everything, they collect all this information about driver behavior, and they share this information with data brokers who sell it to insurance companies. And what's been happening in America is insurance companies are using these databases, which they can buy from data brokers, which are sold by the car companies, and match car drivers to specific insurance policies. And a lot of drivers who have never had a speeding ticket, never had an incident, never had a problem with their car are suddenly seeing their insurance premiums double because the driver data associated with tracking how they drive finds that they brake too hard or they speed too often. There's somebody who apparently the car insurance company found out that once, on just one occasion, he drove 85 miles an hour, and he had actually a sports car. And even though there was no speeding ticket, he wasn't caught because it was recorded on the car data and it was shared with the insurance company by the car company. The car company came back and penalized him. So right now there's actually a class action lawsuit in America against car companies for the increased costs that some drivers are getting through being spied on and having their information shared without their proper knowing consent with these insurance companies and data brokers. So yeah, America right now is passing a law to ban Chinese cars for fears of Americans being spied on by Chinese companies and the Chinese government behind the car companies. But the real issue, I mean, while that's a concern, it's not just American companies are doing this and actually harming American drivers more. And it kind of shows that while I'm all in, I'm all in for the world where people can basically kind of live comfortably and have dates comfortably in cars that drive themselves around town. And what an interesting world that's going to be for going surfing and traveling and going on dates and working and all sorts of things. Those cars are going to be fully spying on you, and they're not going to belong to you, and they're going to be sharing, if there aren't proper protections, they're going to be sharing all that information. I don't know. Those cars being from China is not the top of my list of concerns associated with those things. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for sharing both of those links there. And there's the Cold Fusion link anyway. It's a great channel, actually. Pretty much all the videos are all the videos there are great and watchable. Shubha's saying that Chinese EVs can be remotely turned off from China. I mean, I think as well. There's actually Kadyrov, the head of the sort of Chechnya in Russia, bragged that he was able to get hold of a whole bunch of Tesla Cybertrucks, and that he was going to take them to Ukraine to steal more land. And I'm pretty sure Tesla can probably do the same things to those Cybertrucks. So there you can go. Yeah, the data selling is, Cold Fusion is a great channel. Anyway, falling asleep at the wheel would be so much nicer if they could figure out the whole driving thing. I agree. I think it would really, really be a huge societal game changer if they could make it so that you could just sleep inside your car. But anyway, what else is going on? Wow, 12 minutes, time to speed up. So a few weeks ago, China's been kind of pissing off Japan that, I explained last week how Japan is like this huge sort of sea barrier in front of China that China has to go through for trade, for military, for anything. So they like to remind everybody that they're allowed to sail between Japanese islands. So they go in these straits between Japanese islands. And traditionally, there are broad areas like near Taiwan or whatever where they can go through and not really upset people. But just to prove a point, lately, China put a whole huge aircraft carrier fleet between two very close Japanese islands, basically. So they sort of cut through Japanese waters to do that, just to make the point that they're allowed to pass through. Literally a freedom of navigation operation. And Japan was like, "Hey, China, WTF? What are you doing?" And so this week, Japan joined an exercise with, I think, Australian and Canadian and some other ships sailing through the Taiwan Strait, which China doesn't like anybody going through the Taiwan Strait. So Japan put a Marine Self-Defense Force ship through that, and China lost its shit. Which I'm kind of like, hey, I thought last week you said it's totally normal to sail between islands that you think you own. You were saying this to Japan, but Japan can't do it. So that was a thing. Yes. Apparently, yeah, the Osaka Expo, the 2025 World Expo, they were planning flying cars. I guess they were assuming that we would already have self-driving cars and the cars would all be flying. Flying cars have been 3 years away for the last 50 years. And apparently that while ANA was going to offer an air taxi service at 2025 World Expo in Osaka, they won't. To which I asked Nandianen, which is Osaka dialect. What the hell? Maybe the pilot looked like the mascot. Maybe that was the reason they decided it was a bad idea. Who knows? Interesting article here from Nippon.com talking about representation of women in business in Japan. And interesting stat here that the difference between women managers and executives. So the government is aiming for a 30% or more ratio. But each year the percentage of women executives has gone from 7.8% to 10.9%. But managers, but the ratio of executives is higher, which is to say, while they are finding women to throw onto company boards and so on, basically they're pulling them up and rapidly promoting them. So in a sense, I suppose if you get to be a senior manager and a woman, you've got a better than even chance of getting pushed along into getting an executive role. There isn't much promotion of women in middle ranks. They're just trying to find anybody that they can put so that they can, show that they're making progress towards their gender targets of having 30% executives, and they've got progress there. But further down the ranks, they're not doing anything to promote hiring and career development of women. So, Japan's still not making it easy for itself. And there's another story that I have in here that, the national government set a target for Japanese businesses of having 30% women managers by like next year, which obviously isn't going to happen with these sorts of numbers with only 10.9% in 20 years. The side of the graphic here is cut off, but it's 2024. Oops, I should put this back over here. Oh, come on. Hang on, sorry, I messed that up. But at the same time, these same political parties like the LDP are saying, hey, businesses, you have to have 30% women leaders by then. Yet the LDP itself has less than 10%, I think actually less than 5% women members. So representation of women is still a challenge, even though if they're sort of accelerating at the top ends of the company, they're not really doing what's necessary to actually make sure that there are women leaders coming through and that those people are supported. Please remember to give a like to the video. Yes, indeed. I don't know. I don't like to talk about American politics, but the fact that Trump is pretty much openly saying that, Zelensky's ripping off America and, no one ever defeats Russia, you sound like a hamburger eating surrender monkey to me, honestly. To me, like of all the things I don't care, all the things I dislike about Trump and, as a person and whatever, and there are many and I accept whatever, he's still popular in America. His position on Ukraine, and basically not wanting to support Ukraine defending itself against Russian aggression is the most problematic thing about him. And for all the flaws, and there are many of the Democrats and of his opponent, the fact that he wants to be a Neville Chamberlain, America gives up and, hands like countries over to an aggressive dictator, to me is the biggest problem. So, the idea that lately how he's sort of mocking Zelensky, the president of a country that sort of is under attack, is kind of like and the fact that you've even politicized that the support for the war, other than the fact that it's a great opportunity for all sort of NATO countries to give all their old equipment to Ukraine to defend itself, and all that money is not being given to Ukraine. I mean, it's being given to the military, but it's also being given to go and buy all these F-35s and new planes. So basically, they're clearing out all their F-16s, giving them to Ukraine, and getting them replaced with new American hardware, which is giving jobs to Americans as well. So it's not only supporting Ukraine, but it's actually doing hugely beneficial things for the US economy, and Americans aren't fighting there. So Americans are not losing lives. And yet, the American, the GOP position is, yeah, we should shut down our, upgrading our military, our arms industry, and helping a country defend itself. We should stop doing all of this and just admit that Russia's better than us. Are you kidding? I mean, literally, it would be a victory of North Korea and Iran and Russia over, an alliance of NATO and America. That has severe repercussions, so I really don't like that. The Hyogo governor who bullied some staff to death, multiple staff, they died. He's not sorry. He feels very sorry for himself. Sounds like someone we heard. But he's not sorry for them. The entire assembly in Hyogo voted no confidence in him. He threatened to dissolve the whole assembly, but now he's decided instead he wants to have a new gubernatorial election where he wants to get his mandate renewed by the people of Hyogo Prefecture, where he plans to campaign on probably killing more bureaucrats. And people don't like bureaucrats, but, time and place, dude. In terms of the leadership election, we need 10 more likes, says Aaron. I need all the likes that you can get. It's incomprehensible. I mean, it's not just reprehensible morally, and it doesn't even make sense. I can't, And the Republicans were always the ones that would be okay with this, with this sort of thing, even more aggressive. So anyway, I won't... There's too much American politics. I'm not going to say anything more on that, but I have a big problem with that. So as the leadership election for the LDP, God, which we've hardly talked about, this is the thing about doing it sequentially. It came down to really a race between three people. Shinjiro Koizumi, the son of Junichiro Koizumi, the former prime minister, kind of a heartthrob, kind of what's his name, Justin Trudeau, kind of Canadian prime minister. His son is a famous actor and model. He's kind of seen as very charismatic and, John F. Kennedy, good looking, but not intelligent, like really, really stupid, like not smart at all. Like when they ask him any questions about policies, he always sort of fobs it off and says something like, yes, I just want to, hang out and be young and good looking. He literally says he wants to, like when he became environment minister and they said, what are you going to do as environment minister? What are your main policy priorities? And he said, I want to make being environment minister sexy again. That's literally what he said. That's actually what he said. When they said, "What are you going to do in the G7 as prime minister?" He said, "Well, me and Justin Trudeau, we're the young guys. We're gonna inject it with youthful energy." That's literally what he said. So, Trudeau, Koizumi is just too stupid for words and should be disqualified on that basis. But he had some support. People thought he might make it to the runoff. The other two being Ishiba, who I talked about endlessly, Charlie Brown always kicking and missing the football, and Sanae Takaichi, who years ago, I think I've probably just mentioned even on the show years ago, she used to be probably, yeah, in the early days, 20 years ago, she was the Marjorie Taylor Greene. She would be the one who would jump up and, hey, I can be the most right-wing crazy, we should declare war on China and invade North Korea person. She was in Abe's camp and was, we should have conscription and we should have a military and we should, do all this sort of stuff. And I called her a drooling right-wing maniac. I've called her that. However, under Abe, she's been kind of groomed to be the next prime minister, and she's learned to control her. She's definitely right-wing, but she's not stupid. She has learned. She actually speaks more like a statesperson now, and she's not. While some people have said that she's the next female sort of Hitler, and the fact that on the one of all the policies that you should be debating about running a country, they come to about the economy, defense, immigration. The only things, basically no one wants to discuss those things. So one of the only sort of ways that they could separate the candidates for the LDP election was they asked, do you support married women being able to have separate surnames from their husbands? Which, by the way, married women can have if they marry foreigners, because you don't have your name changed by the family register. But there's kind of a consensus in Japanese society now. Like most polls have 80-90% support for the idea both that gay people should be able to marry, and that spouses, if they wish, should be able to be married while keeping separate surnames, because it can be problems for various reasons in Japan. And she is against those sort of social reforms. But just based on that difference, which when it's against, what that means, the prime minister in Japan isn't like the president of America. They don't have the power to make it happen or not make it happen. It still happens by a whole bunch of committees. A prime minister backing it can speed up and make sure that there are more of those meetings, and that policy is on the list of 50 items on the agenda closer to the top and gets to the end sooner. All of that means by her not supporting it is that it still be on the agenda, because half of the LDP party recognizes people want it and it's on the agenda. It'll just be made item number 50. Whereas if it's Ishiba, there's indications it might be higher on the list, but probably not at the top. And honestly, while I support it, it probably still shouldn't be at the top, because, it's important, but it's not more important than, taxes and immigration, all sorts of other things like that. But because she had this kind of clear and more clearly socially conservative and out of touch position, a lot of people are saying, oh, she's Marjorie Taylor Greene and she's a right-wing maniac. And I've called her that myself, but I think she wouldn't have been the end of the world. And I was also pointing out that she would be Japan's first woman prime minister. And so many people saying that Japan needs more representation in politics, and especially, for women. And wouldn't it be great? All these people who on Twitter, who I see, who I support and I endorse, who talk about how, oh, look, a whole group of men talking about what's best for women. I don't see any women in this photo, the cabinet photos with no women in it. And they say, oh, there should be more women. Well, here's a woman. And literally all the feminists who I follow and who I respect were saying, yeah, not that one. Because she kind of takes a position that they take as being anti-feminist. Although one thing I learned from doing politics and law and studying perspectives of feminism on law is that if you ever want to look for a great counter-argument to a feminist position, just look at what other feminists say, because there's normally opposing views that you could express through feminism on any issue. Like, for example, prostitution was a great one. Some people, some feminists will say that prostitution should be illegal because it is the commodification of women's bodies, by men. And then other feminists will say, no, prostitution should be legalized because the prohibition on prostitution is a patriarchal sort of, it's attempting to stop women from having economic independence through a means that men can't themselves directly control. They're both right, and they're both feminist. But anyway, the feminists definitely did not want her to do this. So I kind of like this. You saying what? Japanese politics Twitter. We want a female prime minister. I ain't giving you a female PM. Never mind. Take Takaichi Sanae. What? No. No, you own it. So I must admit, I was kind of having a little bit of fun saying, hey, aren't you happy that a woman might win? And they were all like, oh my God, no, no. They were actually, the feminists were all very much behind Shigeru Ishiba just because he supports separate surnames. But yeah, they were worried that she was gonna be an anti-feminist feminist, which, yeah, like I say, that's kind of like a lot of feminists are anti-feminist if you look at it that way. Speeding up, we don't have much time left, uh, yes. So Melanie Brock, for example, who I love and respect, she's a great account to follow, but she was definitely hardcore supporting Ishiba in this election. No one expected. I did not expect this, but Charlie Brown finally kicks the ball. That was the headlines. Ishiba won the election, and a runoff against Takaichi Koizumi, thank God, didn't get through it. The first round votes there, and interesting here. Here's a photo of Ichiro Ozawa's party from the 1990s. And there is basically all the people in this are now the most powerful people in Japan. And they were people that used to work for Ichiro Ozawa, who's now backing Noda, which I find interesting. And I like Ozawa. So that's kind of a good sign. I present to you the new Japanese prime minister. Apparently, he didn't know he was going to be put in a costume and just went along with it. Lesson one, know when to say no. The story of the Japanese prime minister ran for LDP leader 2008, placed dead last. 2012, lost to Abe. 2018, lost to Abe. 2020, came third. 2024, won. Never give up, kids. Apparently, similar story with him asking his wife to marry him. I only learned that one tonight. Here is Reiwa Shinsengumi saying about the next prime minister, even if the dances change, the choreography remains the same. The LDP, slaves to the Keidon-ren and US, must be brought down. So, they're insane. Well-intentioned, but insane and dangerous. Oh, I went out running the other day, and I saw a Cyberpunk, what was it, 2024? Oh, God, I should know the name of it. Cyberpunk, whatever Cyberpunk the full name is. This is a replica car that apparently drives around town. I just stumbled across it. I actually made contact with the owner of this car on Twitter. I said, where is this car? What is this from? It's a replica of a video game car. I love this car. I loved it. That was great. That made my day, seeing that when I ran. So I sort of posed and took a selfie with it. I've been using the advanced voice mode of ChatGPT. I pay for ChatGPT, so I tried the advanced voice mode. It's like, wow, it's really cool. I'm brushing up on Spanish lessons with it. I'm using it as a co-pilot when I play Fortnite. It's like having a smart person who remembers stuff, like helping you with stuff. So I'm really impressed with that. Jack Elstein saying that the top three were, he kind of simplified it, saying that Ishiba is not Bernie Sanders. They're all from the LDP. Yamamoto Taro's right. They are kind of all dancing to the same tune in a sense. So I don't know how Koizumi gets to be JD Vance as well. This is a terrible, terrible analogy. I respect Jake's hustle, but I disagree with a lot of the hot takes he does, including that one. Oh, this was also hilarious. Taro Aso, who was vehemently against Ishiba becoming leader, he backed Takaichi. When Ishiba comes up on stage and everyone bows to congratulate him as new prime minister, check out the 1 degree, not even 1 degree, like 0.5 degree head nod. He did not want to bow. Check out, here he is, boom. I do not want to, no respect there. That was a chinga tu madre bow. They taught us that at Business Manners. That is a screw your mother bow from Taro Aso, which was just making it. Also, interesting thing as well. Shigeru Ishiba is a Protestant. A lot of Christians in Japanese politics. Taro Aso is from Kyushu, which is famous as well. The Catholics in Japan are from. His family's a hardcore Catholic family, going a long ways back. So yeah, some people saying, Catholics versus Protestants. That's not the problem, honestly. It's actually Shigeru. Shigeru is an outsider. He wasn't in any of the factions and so on. He's not a team player. He didn't take any of the slush money. Aso's Mr. Slush Money. So he's gonna get Aso in trouble. That's why he's not bowing to him. But that was a nice little bit of drama there. So lots of stuff on that. And then we find out right at the end that we're actually going to get another. Hey, we've just finished an election. Let's get another election to finish it up, because I want to go DJ now. The supermarkets this week, they came out. Kaki came out, and kaki came out. 2 kakis, oysters and persimmons. I also point out persimmons are one of those foods that when I first came to Japan, I'd eat them and they tasted flavorless to me because I'm so used to everything being over food, food dyes and artificial flavors and sugar salt being added to everything. So when my palate got clean after a few months in Japan, I tried a persimmon again. It's like, oh my God, this is the best fruit in the world. It was my favorite fruit. And the deep fried oysters that you get everywhere in Japan are awesome. And the Hiroshima ones they're cheap, they're enormous, they're delicious. I eat way too many oysters. But yeah, persimmons and oysters are now out in the supermarkets, which means it's autumn. It's lovely weather. I was actually enjoying going out for a run the last couple of days. The air cools you down while you run. It's lovely. And it's still, you can wear a t-shirt outside, but it's not hot. You don't get sweaty. It's great. Ishiba might be increasing smoking again, so that's a thing. Did we cover the topics? Oh, there's one topic I didn't talk about: AI, ChatGPT, OpenAI. I know people who work at OpenAI in Japan. The second OpenAI's only office outside of America, the first office that they made outside of America was in Japan, and I know a bunch of people who work there. So I kind of think, yeah, good for you guys that they actually sold to the Japanese government that the job finding service is going to use ChatGPT to find jobs. I don't know if that's a good idea, but they're going to do it. So yeah, it kind of shows Japan's kind of willing and possibly not intelligent ways to use AI, but we'll see. It's at the same time, it's good that they're being proactive with the technology. Yeah, that's a thing. This is something that in AI parlance, because I do AI law now, is considered when you have AI being used to automatically make decisions that impact people's like medical decisions or job or hiring, firing, those kinds of things. That's what you call a high risk use case. And the principle that most countries and companies that have policies around responsible use of AI is that you don't automate high risk decisions such as job placements and so on. You can have the AI help, but there has to be a human in the loop to make sure that you're not, having a bias or discrimination or whatever. So deploying this first up in a job hunting service seems to be a kind of an inappropriate first use. And I can't even really understand what ChatGPT is going to do in that regard. Oh yeah, the other thing that AI is going to do is that the Tokyo government has just launched here, Skynet. They've launched an AI to a matching service for single people to find each other, share tax records, and marry. So yeah, you have to sign up a 110 question questionnaire and pay 11,000 yen with the Tokyo government. If you commute into Tokyo or live in Tokyo, Tokyo will use AI to match you together. Is that necessary? I don't know. Skynet's going to know where you all are and how compatible you are. I mean, who knows? Who could it work? ChatGPT definitely helps with cover letters and all that sort of thing. So I think for covering a whole election and everything, only being 8 minutes over isn't bad. I am going to set up for the after party. I've got a ton of cool music, but last week was great. I want more of that. So I will please, once again, make the music danceable and have it be, quasi, make it fit somewhat for a DJ mix, which I think you guys did a good job of last week. We'll set the BPMs because that is more fun. If it's too far off, it messes everything up. I want to set that up in a moment, but thanks for keeping me company as always. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. I love sharing my insights on all of this with you every week and you putting up with all my shenanigans and squirrel chases and whatnot. And I like the squirrels that you offer me to go chase. Kakigori, there we go. There's another one. Great to see you as always. Do remember to leave a like and hang around the after party. Maybe link. You can go check it out on Tokyo Digital Crew channel anyway, and do go subscribe to that as well. Yeah, I agree. It should be for free because of the low birth rate. So what can we do? After party is here. I'll see you there in just a few minutes. So thanks for keeping me company and boom, peace. Any